Great. Welcome, everyone. This is Lisa Lunghofer. I'm the Executive Director of the Gray Muzzle organization, and I'm joined today by my colleague Amanda Grant, who will be helping me field your questions. We have a terrific webinar planned for you today. Before I introduce our speaker, Denise Fleck, I just want to let you know that you can enter your questions in the question and answer box that you should see on your screen. You can also post questions to Facebook, and we'll be fielding those questions throughout the broadcast. We'll also be taping the webinar, recording it, so it will be available afterwards. All right, so with that, let me introduce Denise Fleck. She's the Pet Safety Crusader, having personally taught more than 20,000 humans to rescue Rover or help Fluffy feel better. Her mission is to help you make a difference in the life of an animal through pet first aid, senior pet care, and disaster preparedness training. Denise has shared these skills on radio and TV. She's authored more than a dozen books and won multiple awards from both the Dog Writers and Cat Writers Associations. She is one of Pet Age Magazine's Women of Influence, and with a soft spot for our older best friends, she serves as the president of the board of directors of the Gray Muzzle organization, and for that we're very thankful. Denise also serves on the board of Emma Zen Foundation, which is focused on making pet oxygen masks, and she's a regular guest speaker at industry conventions. You can find out more about Denise and her work at PetSafetyCrusader.com. So with that, I will turn the floor over to you, Denise. We're thrilled to have you.
It's a bow wow wonderful to be here, especially since we're talking senior dogs today, Lisa. Thank you. And thanks to all of my friends at Gray Muzzle, supporters, followers, and everybody for tuning in today. And I always have a problem getting through the Gray Muzzle mission statement without being tearful. But I do want to say that Gray Muzzle not only envisions a world where no old dog dies alone and afraid, but we're also really striving to help you make sure that all older best friends thrive every day while they're on the planet with us. I'm just going to put a little, I don't know if you can see in the distance there, but there's my 15-year-old best pal, Haiku. He's a Chiquita, part Chow, part Akita. And he's one of the few dogs I didn't adopt as a senior. We actually found him as a puppy wandering in the California desert when he was only 4 weeks old. So we're just delighted that he's made a cross-country trip with us, had PAWS in both the Pacific and the Atlantic. He's been to New Orleans, to Myrtle Beach, Savannah, lived in Los Angeles, and done a whole lot of things. And it's just one of my greatest, I feel, accomplishments in my life that I've been able to help, my dogs get into their seniorhood. So without further ado, let's talk about some things that maybe you can do too to make sure that they're safe during the summer and all year long. But today, typically, we're going to hit those summertime dog safety tips. We're going to start off with just a little bit about National Pet Fire Safety today, because that's what today is, July 15th. We're going to hopefully hit all of these topics. I'm going to do a very brief intro on checking vitals, because it's important to know how to check your pet's vitals so that you know if they're suffering from any of the ailments we're going to discuss. We'll talk about heat injuries, chemicals and fertilizer, travel safety, because people sometimes travel during summer, and even with COVID going on, going to a national park or someplace with just the family and the senior dog might be on the agenda. Water safety, wildlife, and picnics and cookouts. So since today is, like I said, National Pet Fire Safety Day, I do want to just share a brief little story about one of my pet first aid students way back in 2008. And I'm just delighted to say that since that time, she's become one of my very dearest friends on the planet. But after taking the pet first aid class and seeing me discuss pet oxygen masks, she was motivated and started a foundation that supplies those to first responders all around the country. So that's an important thing for you to know about, in that you should make sure that your county fire department does have pet oxygen masks. Humans are going to always be the priority for them, but it's great if they have these life-saving tools because they really fit properly over the dog's snout. And they also fit, you know, like I was about to show you here, they come in 3 sizes. So they can, you know, even get pocket pets and kitty cats and dogs with the brachycephalic flattened faces. But it's so important because more than 5,000 pets die in fires every year. And pets actually start about 1/5 of those fires. And half of those fires start in the kitchen. So these are just really important things to be aware of so that we prevent them from happening. So I'm going to take you through 3 quick steps preparing for the worst. You need to do drills. I don't care if you do the most elaborate emergency plan, your senior dog isn't going to read it. You need to take him through the steps and remind him how to get in his harness or, you know, his leash. Maybe it's his crate so that he can evacuate. Maybe you're going to take him out a different door should there happen to be a fire, or down a back alley. So every once in a while, you know, at the change of seasons or when we turn the clocks back and forward, practice this with your pet because that's the way they learn, by us actually taking them through the steps. Also be aware of any hiding places. Sometimes when dogs get older, they do actually hide when they hadn't before. Different noises start to bother them. I've actually had 2 senior dogs that suddenly developed a phobia to the stapler. Maybe I'm old-fashioned using a stapler still, but I actually would have to go in the garage to staple so they wouldn't hear because they literally got very upset with it. So, you know, there are late onset things that sometimes set them off. So know where they hide and how to get them out of that place in a timely fashion. When you do have to leave your pets alone, just in case the worst happens, maybe you want to leave them in an area where they're easily retrieved. So if you have one of those pet alert stickers on your door that says to the fireman, I live with 3 dogs, a cat, a bird, and a gecko, if they, you know, come in to rescue your pets when you're not home, that dog is behind a baby gate or in a certain room that you can notate so that they can rescue them rather than searching all over high and low, especially for smaller pets. And of course, if you have a mischievous pet, it's a good idea also to keep them in a crate or behind a baby gate when you go out, just so that they don't get into trouble and start fires. And lastly, in preparing for the worst, smoke detectors that are connected to a response service so that, you know, the fire department will be notified if the worst happens when you aren't home. Now, when it comes time to make a quick escape, stay calm. Take that deep breath, hug a tree, count to 10, whatever it happens to be. But humans really get what's called an acute adrenaline dump when we panic. And you need a moment to process that surge because your brain as well as your motor skills don't work. So make sure you stay calm and then round up the troops, human and animal. Once you get out, this is one of the hardest things for a pet lover to hear, but do not go back in. Many a human die going back in to rescue somebody else. Wait till the fire department gets there, let them know animals or people are in there. You can leave doors and windows open and call the animal, and hopefully he'll come out. And then do your best just to prevent that fire altogether. I don't know if any of you are Tammy Wynette fans out there, but I'm changing it up a little bit and saying, stand by your pan. A lot of us cook and we just toddle off somewhere else to, you know, check the computer, answer the phone, see who's at the door. And that's when, you know, fires can happen. The no kitchen rule may be important for some people. My friend Deborah Joe, who started that foundation I was talking about, shares her life with a Great Dane, with a cat, with a rabbit, with a tortoise, with a pot-bellied pig, with several parrots and other menagerie of animals. But she's really trained them that she throws treats in the dining room and puts them on a stay or a down there, and they don't come in the kitchen. Cover the knob so that the dog, when he dumps up, can't turn a knob. Turn your pan handles inward so that nobody can bump them as they go by. And tidiness just might be the new preparedness, meaning, you know, often it isn't the animals that really cause the fire, but they take our clutter and create a fire. So if you have a dish towel or newspapers or anything, pizza box, sitting on the counter or near the stove, when they put up those paws to counter serve, they may knock it onto a hot burner. So do keep that in mind. And then of course, always supervise around candles, fire pits, barbecues, and whatnot. When the Amazon Foundation, that I'm also on the board of, does, you know, booths throughout the year at various pet adoption and different types of events. One time there was this lady that was really anxious to talk to our founder. And you could see, you know, she was anxious, she wanted to talk, but she was waiting patiently because those booths get busy sometimes. And when she finally got to talk to Deborah Jo, she just came up to her and said, I want to thank you because you supplied pet oxygen masks to our county fire department. Our dog jumped up on the stove and pushed the kitchen towel onto the burner and started a fire. We lost everything. We lost it all, but we have everything because we have our animals. So because that fire department was able to resuscitate the dog, and I believe they also had a kitty cat, they still have their furry family members. So do check what is available in your community to save your pets should the worst happen. Let's talk about checking vitals on our pets. We all know how to check our pulse at the wrist or the carotid, but the best place on our senior best friends is at the femoral artery. Let me hold up the little guy first here. What you want to do is put 2 fingers at the hind leg where the knee is and roll them inward. Where you're actually feeling the pulse is right here in the groin. It's on the thigh of the hind leg. Don't use your thumb, you'll get your own rate. Feel for the pulse right there on either hind leg, right in the groin. Pulse is, you know, that rhythmic movement of blood through the artery. The heart beats and then the blood pulses through the artery. You'll see here on the chart, our smaller friends beat at about 90 to 160 beats per minute, where our bigger breeds will be about 65 to 90 beats per minute. So know what is normal for your senior dog. And that has probably changed since he was younger. So it's good if you knew it before to check it again regularly and get that baseline. As far as their breathing or respiration, the best thing to do is just watch the side of the chest for that rise and fall. Just be like stealth and watch. But you can also place your hand here. 1 inhalation and 1 exhalation equals 1 breath. People often think, you know, you can just put your hand in front of the doggy's mouth to feel how many times he exhales. You can, but even when they're seniors, when the hand comes here, they often get excited thinking a treat's coming too. They start to pant and we lose our count. So just keep an eye on the chest and notice that our smaller dogs breathe about 20 to 40 breaths per minute and our larger ones a little bit faster, 10 to 30 breaths per minute. Temperature. If your dog is 98.6 like you are, he's in a whole heap of a lot of trouble. On average, our canine PAWS should be 101 degrees Fahrenheit. Sometimes senior dogs actually have even a temperature spike during the night, so sometimes they like, you know, to sleep in a cooler spot. But on average, it's about 101 degrees Fahrenheit. Kind of the old-fashioned way with, you know, a digital thermometer, always lubricate it with some sort, I know everything's backwards, I think, for you, but you know, some KY jelly, Vaseline, vitamin E gel to make it slide easily. And you're gonna lift that tail to prevent them from sitting down and then insert at about a 45-degree angle, a ½ inch to an inch. It's a great tip to get on your digital thermometer, mark that line where an inch is. And as soon as that line disappears, don't go any further. You don't want to perforate the bowel or do any damage, so you just don't want to go further. But if you're a little queasy about that, there are ear thermometers, and now there are even infrared ear thermometers on the market that you can hold about 2 inches from the ear or from the inner thigh to get that temperature. The range for our dogs is 100.4 to 102.5. So they do run warmer than us, but you just want to find out what is normal for them. Capillary refill time may be something that's a little bit unfamiliar to you, but it's going to be really important when we talk about some ailments later in this webinar today. So I just want you to get acquainted that it is a layperson's measure of circulation. As kids, we've all pressed on our fingernail, turned it white, and when we release the pressure, we, you know, typically see how quickly that pink color comes back if we don't have nail polish on that day. What we're doing is we're diminishing the blood flow. Excuse me, Haiku. He wants to chime in. We're diminishing the blood flow to the tip of our fingers for a moment. And when we release that pressure, the blood should start circulating again very quickly if we have a good circulatory system. However, pressing on the fingernails doesn't work on our canine pals like my buddy over there, Haiku, who, doesn't have quite the same setup. So what we do is we press on their gums. We very carefully lift the lip and press on the gum, don't dig the fingernail in, right above the teeth until we whiten it or turn it light. When we then release that pressure, we want to see that the color returns in less than 2 seconds. Really, really important. Now, if you have a best friend with dark gums, right here's my Haiku up close and personal, you see he has that dark pigment. Chows, black labs, many other breeds may have that dark gums, dark eyeliner, and the whole bit. So you can still press on the gums, but it's much more advisable to actually pull down and turn inside out the lower eyelid just ever so gently. As long as you see pink there, you're good to go. Because that's what we are striving for, is that healthy, what we call bubblegum pink. Any of these other colors, we need to get to the vet. We're going to talk about red later. That would be a pet that's suffering from heat stroke. His body is too hot. If it's kind of in, this pale range, it could be an anemic pet, a pet that has lost blood, a pet who isn't circulating blood and has gone into cardiac arrest. The blues and the yellows generally mean poor oxygen saturation. The pet may not be breathing at all or be having difficulty to breathe. And the yellow, like you see up here, but also look at the picture at the bottom, the gums, the inner ear flaps, the whites of the eyes would turn yellow or jaundice. We call that icteric. And that can happen from liver disease, but it can also happen from some of our summertime disasters. If your pet ingests zinc, and where might he get into zinc? SPF for one. But another source of that, just to know, are pennies. Because any of you that may have been born before 1983 may not know about this, but beginning in 1983, the US government issued pennies that are actually zinc discs coated, copper discs coated with zinc. And when they get in the canine tummy and that acidic acid starts wearing it down, it breaks down that zinc, which gets into the bloodstream. And initially you'll have breathing difficulties and upset tummies, but as few as 2 pennies can be fatal for a small dog. So again, tidiness could be the new preparedness. Hydration is another underrated and oh so important vital. The planet Earth is 70% water, and so are we, and so are our dogs. So make sure they have a good, healthy supply at all times. But there are 2 ways you can check their hydration. One you may have learned called the Tuger test, where you actually grab, a little skin here right at the nape of the neck and pinch it gently. And then when you release it, if it falls back into place, we feel the pet's well hydrated. Problem with that with our senior best pals here is sometimes they do lose elasticity in their skin. So it's not always the best test. I like to have you test at the gums. And once again, just carefully lift the lip and feel the gums. If they're sloppy wet, your dog is good to go. But if they're dry or even sticky, encourage them to drink. Sometimes pets won't, go to their water bowl when they're not feeling their best. But they might drink a little out of mom or dad's hands or suck on some ice cubes. Maybe you can make them some great frozen treats during the summer. Get some of these silicone trays. They come in bone shapes or heart shapes, or this is a paw shape. And you can mix things like peanut butter and yogurt, non-fat, of course. And remember with peanut butter to make sure it doesn't contain xylitol, Xylitol, which is an artificial sweetener that will drop your dog's glucose quickly. You can mix coconut oil and blueberries. Coconut oil is great. And you freeze them in these silicone trays and pop them out as a treat to keep your pet well hydrated and cool. Pets that are too hot will be tired, they'll be constipated, their heart may be increased, and their eyes sunken. Yeah, I know this isn't a canine, but I didn't have a picture, thankfully, of a dehydrated dog. So it just shows how when you're doing the Tuger test, how that skin would stick together if the pet was dehydrated. And then just every week, especially with an older best friend, do a head to tail checkup. And you don't have to be formally trained in that. Just really check him over from head to tail, looking for bumps and lumps, parasites, burrs, whatever it might be, noticing if his breathing isn't labored and so on, to really keep him, you know, in best shape for the whole summertime and beyond. So let's talk heat. I know in some parts of the country, it's really starting to heat up here. So Mary loved her doggie Daisy and always wanted her by her side. One 80-degree day, the girls went for a car ride and Mary stopped at a convenience store for a jug of milk. When she got in there, she encountered a line of customers and a brand new cashier who was having difficulty working the machine. We've all been there and done that, but this delayed her stop. By the time she got back to the car, Daisy was panting profusely. Her gums were bright red. There was just little bits of foam around her mouth. Daisy was suffering from heat stroke. So this is going to be my rule number one. Do not leave your pet in a parked car, even for a few minutes, when it's actually 70 degrees or above. The cars are generally sitting on asphalt or concrete, which gets very hot, and it radiates that heat up through the metal of the car very quickly. Your dog, as you now know, is panting 101 degrees, 102, 103, 104 as he gets hotter, and the sun's coming in the windows making that greenhouse effect. So it can get very hot, fatally hot, very quick. If it's too hot for you, it's too hot for our dogs. They're not machines, they're living beings like us. So keep that in mind. I can't emphasize enough to keep them well hydrated, and I already mentioned the frozen treats. Do remember, dogs don't sweat like we do with sweat glands all over their bodies. They basically have an evaporative cooling system going on called panting, where they're trying to take that cooler outside air over in their tongue to bring it into their lungs and cool them off. Other than that, they can release heat through the pads of their feet. Dogs can actually sweat out their feet. They're generally in distress by the time you see that happening. And I'm sure we've all seen a dog that went swimming or walked through a puddle and he leaves his footprints behind. That's one thing, but I'm saying he can internally sweat out the paw and leave those paw prints behind. And that's when we know he's not in good shape. So talking about the paws, let's protect those all summer long. They're precious paws. And if, you know, we just don't want them to get burned. Look in this picture of, you don't think I love my haiku, do I? I put his pictures everywhere. Look in this green box here. 77 degrees, 86 degrees, 87 degrees air temperature. Most of us are pretty happy campers at those temperatures. But look across the chart. The surface temperature is anywhere from 125 to 143 during those conditions. So that means the asphalt and the concrete, maybe you have a brick pathway. If you're out in the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, sometimes even the sand and the grass can get into the 120-degree mark. So remember, that can really burn those paws. I keep saying I'm going to do a test. I haven't done it yet, but I have been told that you can fry an egg on the surface if it's 131 degrees. So we're talking somewhere in the low 80 degrees as far as air temperature. So protect those paws. Get your pets used to wearing little dog shoes for that quick potty breakout. Maybe use some of that mushers or other type of wax to form a barrier, but just limit the time when the weather is hot. And one note about doggy shoes, remember you're covering up the one place where dogs can release heat from their bodies. So only use it for that quick potty break and then get those shoes off. Don't leave them on for an extended period of time on a hot day, or you can overheat your pet just by doing that. Really, really important. And remember, senior pets sometimes have more trouble regulating their temperatures than the younger dogs. So they may be hotter or colder quicker. So keep that in mind. If your pet does seem to be too hot, though, get him out of that hot environment. Get him on your kitchen or bathroom floor where it's tile and you can have a fan blowing on him. But the best way to cool off a hot dog is from the paws up. Get those paws wet, the pits, the groin, and the belly skin. If you put him in a wading pool or a tub or a sink, depending on how big your doggy is, only take the water up to the belly though, especially like if you take your dog to your pool and get him on the pool steps, only let the water go up to his belly. If you take it up over his sides and his shoulders, you're gonna cool him off too quickly. And instead of being hyperthermic, you're gonna take him and make him hypothermic. So an equally bad situation. Really important. Once you've started the cooling process, take that temperature as I showed you how a little bit ago, and 104 is your red flag. Anytime your dog has gotten to be 104 degrees, even if you bring that temperature down quickly, it's time for an immediate vet visit. Some people say, well, I'm just gonna wrap the dog in a wet towel, let the car air conditioner blow on him, and we're gonna hightail it to the vet. Part of that is a good idea. Don't ever wrap a hot dog in a wet towel because you're gonna create a sauna effect. So you could put like a wet towel or a sheet over his back and have the air conditioning blowing on him, but don't, ensconce him in that wet towel. And sunburn is also a concern for our dogs. Ear tips, noses, sometimes belly skin for those that like to lay belly up. Just from one of our advisory board members, I have a quote here, and he's really concerned about a lot of the things that are in suntan lotion. And I already mentioned zinc can be problematic if your pet licks it off of you. So, just provide plenty of shade. And there are some SPF dog suits, some visors, some hats, if you can get your pet to wear apparel, that might just help as well. But it's your responsibility as the pet owner to keep him out of harm's way. Chemicals and fertilizers, I'm going to kind of go through here quickly and just say, buy pet friendly as much as possible, because that way you don't have to worry so much about what your pet gets into in the yard. What they don't absorb through the pads of their feet, they're going to ingest when they lick off their body. So it's really important when we're talking fertilizers, weed killers, anything along those lines. Also, keep your pets parasite free. I mean, fleas, ticks, heartworm, depending on where you live. Really talk to your vet, because your vet might know what works best in your particular area. Sometimes certain preventives don't work after a while. The bugs get immune to them. And, do your research. A lot of people I know don't want to put chemicals on their pets. I understand, especially when they're a senior. But sometimes the disease they can get from these little bugs can be potentially more harmful than the side effects from, the preventive. So whenever you use something on your pet, just always observe him, keep checking whether it's a collar or an ointment or something you put on him. Notice his, body language and how he's responding to it. And, let your veterinarian be your dog's second best friend to really communicate with them over this. And then I just also want to mention to never, ever, ever shave your dog's fur down to the skin. That fur is a protective layer. It protects the skin. Some of the hairless breeds actually have some serious problems with sunburn and skin cancer. So don't let your dog's skin be exposed to the sun. Yeah, we all get these problematic little creatures sometimes. Some of us find them completely disgusting. Some of us have pulled so many off of so many dogs. It just is what it is. But what I just want to say quickly about removing ticks is, if you don't want to, snap that tick out of the pet's body, something you can try first is just get a little cotton ball and soak it in either rubbing alcohol, if you can find it these days, or liquid dish soap, and place it right on the tick on your pet's fur. Very often that might actually cause the tick to back out, and then you just need to pluck him off the skin or the fur. But if you are removing a tick, don't twist him out. You can't unscrew a tick. You need to pull him straight out. Don't try to burn him off with a blown out match or smother him with nail polish, or Vaseline, or any of these other wives' tales we've heard about. Pull him straight out. And what I do recommend, there are all different kinds on the market, to get the kind of tick remover that has, this little V shape. Sometimes it's in the shape of a spoon or a stick. This one's on the end of a tweezer, but just slide that underneath the tick and pull straight up. I know a lot of people always worry about leaving what they call the head of the tick in the pet's body. What it actually is are the hypostomes. They're tiny little pincher things, almost like, the minute, but like the tips of a tweezer. And they're the straws that they drink the blood out of. It really, is rarely a problem should that happen, but that can sometimes happen if you twist. So just lift that tick out and then put a little hydrogen peroxide, if you don't mind a dark pet's fur getting a little bleached out, a little Bactine, a little rubbing alcohol, a little Neosporin type, the least amount possible, and try to prevent your pet from licking it. But also, if you have any concerns about that tick being diseased, drown him in some soapy water or rubbing alcohol. This isn't tick first aid here today. And save him for a day or two in a plastic Ziploc baggie in case your pet is showing any signs of infection. Then you have that tick to take to the veterinarian. Since it is summer, people are traveling. So this is one of my pet peeves. I don't care what the laws are in your state or your city, neither of these are ever a good idea. Dogs need to, it's a training trick. You know, everybody says, oh, well, I like to open my front door, the dog jumps in the passenger seat, rides shotgun, and has the best time. No, you train him to like his harness, you treat him, and you let it become a good experience. You need to secure your pet, never by a neck collar, but by a body harness, to a seat belt. Smaller pets that are in crates, you actually have to attach that crate, because otherwise, if you slam on the brakes, the whole thing becomes a projectile. Really important to think about. Not only is it safe for the pet, but you don't want him to get injured in that accident, but very often after an impact, doors get swung open and windows get broken. And if your pet isn't restrained, he hops out that window only to get hit by another car. Also, sometimes paramedics can't help us because it doesn't have to be that protective Rottweiler, it can be a protective Chihuahua not letting them get to you, and they have to wait for animal control to come and, you know, strangle the dog. Really, really important. And last thing about the passenger seat, there's an item called the airbag, and it comes out like 200 miles per hour when it's deployed. Small dogs, it generally breaks their necks if they're sitting in the front seat. A larger dog like Haiku there would hit him in the face, causing him to chomp down on his tongue, severing the lingual artery. You don't have to remember the name of that, but realize artery means heavy bleeder. So you now have a dog in an emergency situation, and the car probably isn't drivable, or you aren't capable of driving it if the airbag's been deployed. So I'm just going to leave you with this amazing website, centerforpetsafety.org. They're a nonprofit. They're kind of like the Consumer Reports of dog safety products. And they do all kinds of testing, and they can tell you what are the best harnesses and seatbelts for your pets, which ones they've given their seal of approval to. And they also have great little infographics like this about where the best place is for your pets to sit. You see, if you have a van or an SUV with the 3 rows, if it's a small doggy, he should be here in the middle. If he's 20 pounds and above, he should be in the back. But, you know, there's much more to that than I can do, you know, in this webinar. But I just do want to mention, when you're traveling this summer or anytime, keep your canine best pals safe as well. Amanda, I realized I didn't stop if anybody had questions so far. So maybe I should take a breath and see if there's anything before I go on.
There's nothing so far, so you are good to continue.
Awesome. So let's talk about the water. If it's in a pool, there's chlorine, there could be diatomaceous earth filters, there are chemicals that your pet should not drink. So don't let that be his main drinking source. I, many years ago, had somebody who said, oh, my dog's fine, we have a pool in the backyard, we never need to fill up his water bowl. We also need to keep pets safe. Even if your dog's middle name is Retriever, it doesn't mean he excels at swimming. And short-necked dogs, like the bulldog you see at the top of the screen, have short necks, and it's harder for them to keep their heads out of the water. So supervise, supervise, supervise. Don't let your pet near a pool, you know, without somebody being around, or a lake or a stream. Have it fenced off separately. Have some kind of device that alerts you if an animal falls in, and have a ramp so that the pet can easily get out. If your dog swims every summer with you, you need to retrain him at the beginning of each summer where those steps are so that he knows how to get out, because sometimes even when they know, they will, you know, chase that squirrel. My Haiku did that once. I was up there and he rounded that corner too quickly and splash right in the deep end. And did he swim to the steps like he had been trained? No, he swam to the closest side, held onto the skimmer for dear life. And you know what? It was February. And I jumped in and grabbed him, and I'm not telling you to do that. That's what I was about to say. Do as I say, not as I do. But I felt confident I could do that. But the problem is sometimes a panicked dog, like a panicked person, will get on your head or shoulders and push you under. So it's always better to hold out the pool skimmer pole or a towel or anything you can find that the dog can grab onto and pull him safely to shore. I just want to mention there are different brands of these, but I do like this type of life preserver better than just the vest, because as you see in the picture there on the bottom, their collar actually goes through these Velcro loops. And even if they fatigue, their head stays above water. So that's really a good safety device to explore for your dogs if you have a swimming pet. Now, algae blooms. They used to call this red tide, but it comes in all different colors. So we're just kind of referring to it as algae blooms now. And algae is a non-flowering plant-like organism that produces energy through photosynthesis. We all learned about this in grade school. But what its byproduct is oxygen. And blue-green algae actually produces 50% of the oxygen on this planet. However, it can be dangerous to Fido. So you see my 1, 2, 3, 4 over here on the right side of the screen. Anytime you're going to any body of water, look for signs or flags that are posted to make sure there aren't algae blooms. Sometimes they can actually be clear, they can be blue-green up to red. A good little test if you want to get in the water is if you're in there, if you can't see your feet, if it's kind of murky, don't let the dog in there. There's also apps. This is just one, the swimguide.org, get the app. That will let you know when you're planning your trips if the water is safe at different bodies of water. I'm sure they don't cover every one of them, but it's a good guideline. And then anytime your pet has been in water, whether it's chlorinated, or a lake, an ocean, bathe if you can, or at least rinse him with fresh water to get any toxins off his skin and make sure he doesn't, ingest any of them when grooming. And just always give them fresh water all the time so that they're not trying to drink other bodies of water. Because as you can see over here, algae blooms can actually be fatal. There were quite a few stories last summer about this. It presents as both gastrointestinal and neurological problems. You see tummy problems with vomiting and diarrhea, but also seizures. So beware of algae blooms. And hyponatremia. Natremia comes from the salt, from salt. This is a sodium deficiency that dogs who love water sports can get. The dog that will just keep chasing the ball or the stick or the frisbee, and every time he retrieves it in the water, he also retrieves a mouthful of water. So what he's actually doing is he's diluting his plasma, his electrolytes start to drop, and both his brain and the other organs of his body can start to swell. So please give your doggy timeouts. Really make those timeouts every 10 minutes or so. Make him go sit down in the shade and take a break. Because I know some, animals, in particular labs, will just chase that ball forever. But this is a life-threatening emergency. And as you can see, one of our other Gray Muzzle Advisory Board member veterinarians says, get to the vet ASAP. It's critical to be super careful in how fast you put sodium back to normal. So you don't want to just give electrolytes in this case. The pet, again, is going to have both gastrointestinal and neurological problems. His belly may be bloated or he may be throwing up, but he's going to be uncoordinated. His pupils may be not reacting properly to light, or they may just stay in a dilated position or look glazed over. He may be salivating a lot, but if your pet isn't right, something isn't right with him and you need to get to veterinary care. But let him enjoy the water, but make sure he takes those breaks and that you give him plenty of fresh water so he doesn't feel compelled to drink from other bodies of water. And again, with salt water, vomiting and diarrhea is what can occur if they drink from that. So provide the shade, provide the fresh water. And if he's seeming to have very minor vomiting or diarrhea after being in salt water, it depends how much of a paranoid dog mom you are. But if it's going on for 24 hours, absolutely get to the vet. Swimmer's ear might be something you don't think about with your pets, but they can get that redness, that pain, that itching that we do too. And oftentimes with swimmer's ear, it's something that you didn't even know about to begin with. You might have a foxtail or have already had an ear infection or mites that has brought this on. So again, after they're in water, talk to your veterinarian about what's best for your particular senior dog, but you'll probably be recommended to flush the ears all the time and with something that also includes a drying agent to get that water out there, because dogs have more L-shaped ear canals than we do. When the water goes down, it can stay down there and get trapped and then come, turn into a fungal or a yeast infection. So just keep those ears dry and those bodies rinsed off from whatever type of water your pet swims in. As for the critters he might encounter during the summer, there are the flying insects. What you want to do if you actually see a stinger, and most of us won't because the pet will have already buried his face in the ground, is to flick it away with a finger, a credit card, a popsicle stick. Don't pinch it out, because what you do then is you break the little toxin sac next to the stinger, and that's when the pet has the allergic reaction. But if that has already happened, what you're going to want to administer is 1 milligram of Benadryl for every pound your pet weighs. Do check with your veterinarian if your dog is on other medications, especially as a senior dog. If he has other health conditions, don't do this without checking with your veterinarian. But typically you want Benadryl that has only diphenhydramine, no other ingredients added. And I like getting the gel caps. I don't know if you can see them there. But what you do is you just have a safety pin in your pet first aid kit. You prick one of these open and squirt it right under the tongue. It gets in sublingually a little bit quicker than if it has to be processed through the stomach. And sometimes that's an easier way to give a pill. Also, for any swelling, you can apply a cold pack, but remove it every few minutes so that you don't create frostbite. And typically with that one sting on a basically healthy dog, within 20 or 30 minutes, he starts getting very sleepy, starts scratching at it, and you don't have a big deal. However, if it's multiple stings or any time there's severe swelling or any even hint of breathing difficulty, no, wait and see. Get right to your veterinarian. Dogs can go into anaphylactic shock like we can, and very often the tongue will swell, which will make it even difficult for you to do rescue breathing should you know how to do that. Once your pet has been determined to be allergic, particularly allergic to bee stings, your veterinarian might prescribe an EpiPen like you see here, and that would go right into the thigh. I will tell you though, even if you administer that, I would still get to veterinary care, because sometimes the epinephrine wears off before the bee or insect toxin leaves the body, and your pet can still have a bad reaction. So do your best to train them, humanely, to stay away from those little buzzing creatures. Flies, all I can say about this is the first line: don't leave dogs outside when it's hot or anytime. Pick up the fallen fruit, or when your dog goes to the bathroom, clean it up, because those things attract flies. Cover the garbage cans. Use fly traps. Petroleum jelly, or that, that Elon Skin So Soft, is one of those things that really does seem to repel, especially on the ears. You want to be careful about the nose or any place they might lick, though. You don't want them to ingest it. And some people swear that if you put a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in their water, it'll keep flies away when they ingest it, something about the apple cider. But if your dog won't drink the water because there's apple cider vinegar, that's not a good thing. Do you know a dog's nose is so sensitive that he can actually distinguish a spoonful of sugar in an Olympic-sized swimming pool full of water? So you know he's going to smell apple cider vinegar in his water. So just be careful with that. But should he get some of those scabs and all, soften them with a warm, wet washcloth. Don't just scrape them off, and wash with chlorhexidine. What most of us use instead of chlorhexidine, unless we're in the medical field, is we get a product called HYPOCLEANSE. It's a pink liquid you can get in your drugstore, and it's a great antibacterial soap for anything. So clean the ears really good, apply a Neosporin type product, always the least amount so it'll absorb in quickly and the dog won't lick it off, and do your best to keep your dog fly free. Some dogs actually have flies that lay the eggs in there and maggots come out of the ears. This is such a big problem for outdoor dogs. So keep them away from, fly strikes. Snakes, prevention is key. If your dog isn't on leash, it's hard to pull him back when you hear that rattle. Don't let your dog sniff under rocks and logs. Yeah, right. But that's where, you know, these critters hang out. It's always best to step on a fallen log rather than over it when you're hiking in the woods so that the creatures don't come out and bite you in the heel. Stick to well-traveled paths. If you're in an area that has a humane snake avoidance clinic, consider taking your dog through that. And just, you know, keep down the rodent population. Garbage cans, wood piles, even ivy are places mice hang out. And where mice hang out, snakes are lining up for dinner. But life happens, and this was my sweet bonsai who got bitten in our own backyard in California one time, but fortunately lived to tell about it. So if it's a non-venomous snake bite, wash it good with that antibacterial soap and watch. Because, you know, even non-venomous snakes eat rats and mice, so they have a nasty bacteria in their mouth. And your pet could need antibiotics even from a non-venomous snake bite. How do you know if he's non-venomous? Well, maybe we have some herpetologists in the audience, but if not, some very quick signs here. The picture on the top left, the more triangular shaped head is typically a venomous snake. Venomous snakes, as you go down this list, often too have a thick body in relation to their length. The exception to that rule would be those of you that have coral snake. Third bullet there, I hope none of you are close enough to see it, but it's those elliptical pupils like kitty cats have. Snakes, you know, venomous snakes have those rather than round circles like us and our dogs. They have fangs, so they will leave a, you know, Dracula bite. However, it won't always be 2 punctures. It may just be 1. Sometimes they miss, and actually some rattlesnakes shed a fang about every 6 weeks, so they may not have both. And then obviously some of them have a rattle. Rattles are made of keratin, very similar to our fingernails. And when a baby snake is born, he has one little button or segment of his rattle. He eats and eats and eats, gets big, sheds his skin, and he gets another segment. So every time they shed their skin, they get another button on their rattle. But if a baby snake hasn't shed his skin yet, he may not issue a warning. However, he's born with fangs, he's born with venom, he generally holds on longer and gives all you have. So don't think you're out of the woods if your dog gets bitten by a baby snake. Just really brief here, and I'm going to start talking fast because there's a few things I really still want to get in before we're at the hour. But if you live in an area where there are water moccasins, they are called cottonmouths because when they open their mouth, it's snow white inside. You can tell those water snakes because their whole body is above the water. Other water snakes that are non-venomous, there can be an exception to the rule, but many of them just have their heads above water. And then, you know, it's kind of up to you to learn what's indigenous to your area. You may have learned these childhood rhymes like with the coral snake, red on yellow, dangerous fellow. So that's what we see here. The red is touching the yellow. But if the red is touching black, he's safe for Jack, or Fido or Rover or whatever your dog's name happens to be. And if you're in the southeast like I am, you might have these copperheads. They say these kind of look like Hershey's Kisses, but I don't think I want to equate that with a snake. So know what the venomous snakes look like in your area. And venom is what they give. Anti-venom is the antidote. So if your dog is bitten, 3 things. Keep that bite below the heart. Don't elevate that paw. Try to keep it below so that the venom won't rush to the heart and lungs. 2, keep the pet calm and immobile. Carry your smaller dog to the car as you go to the vet. If you're still hiking a bigger dog out of the woods, don't run him. I know you want to get there quickly, but the faster he runs, the faster his respiration and heart rate, and the more quickly the venom will travel to the heart. And then thirdly, call ahead and get to your emergency center or vet, knowing that they have the ability to treat it. All vets don't always carry anti-venom, so it might be your emergency center, so call ahead. Wound below the heart, keep the pet calm, and call ahead to get to anti-venom. And if you're on the coast with jellyfish, my big rule here is no fresh water. Don't pour fresh water on the wound. What you actually want to have in your happy little, you know, pet first aid kit is alcohol or white vinegar, which you would pour on the tentacles first, and then sticky tape, preferably not duct tape, but like packaging tape, and you lay that where the tentacles are and pull them off. Kind of like, you know, ladies, if you were doing one of those waxy. You then always flush it with either salt water or beach sand. Fresh water will cause the tentacles to actually release their toxin into the dog. And then, you know, get to your bed as quickly as possible. He might say on the way, depending on how long it's going to take you there, to once again do Benadryl, or what your mom probably taught you with a baking soda paste to kind of draw out some of the toxin. And you might also need to alternate hot and cold warm compresses until you reach the vet. The cold keeps down the inflammation, and then the warm starts the blood flowing to flush the toxin out. Then the cold gets the inflammation and the warm gets things flowing. So just be aware they have signs like this on the beach when they have what's called a jellyfish bloom, when they all come to the shore. So just, you know, avoid those high risk areas. And last but not least on the wildlife are toads. Dogs like to lick toads and chase toads. This can be a life-threatening emergency. So teach your pet leave it, and, you know, just always observe him. But again, we're going to be faced with some neurological signs. What I want to say about toads is what you want to do is you want to rinse the dog's mouth, but don't ever have his head back. Make sure the mouth is forward or to the side, so as you're rinsing that toxin out of the mouth, it's flowing right out of your dog's mouth and he's not swallowing it. And then get him quickly to medical care. There are the cane toads. It's also known as a bufo toad in the southeast, and I believe in Texas, maybe Hawaii too. They're actually like 6 inches big. They're enormous, but smaller toads can be problematic as well. And last but not least, our picnics and cookouts. So let me speed through this, and then I'm happy to take time if anybody has any questions. I know I'm going fast, but I just want to give you so much to think about so that you can keep your senior best pals safe. You know, it's inevitable. We're having those cookouts or picnics. Maybe it's just us quarantining at home, but no fried or salty foods. I have a friend just recently whose dog is suffering from pancreatitis. It's really painful. It can be deadly. So, you know, careful with the chips, anything salty or greasy. Dogs metabolize fats very differently than humans do. So it's important we keep paws off those things. Be aware of corn cobs and cooked bones. It doesn't take long for them to snatch one, and they can swallow it, and it can become a choking incident, or it can get in the intestines and become a blockage, or if it's bone, it can be piercing, you know, some part of the body. Watermelons and other seeds and pits, peaches, plums, apples. It's not the fruit that's the problem, it's the seed or the pit. They actually contain either cyanide or arsenic. So if your dog chomps into that seed, he can potentially be poisoned. If a dog swallows a peach pit whole, it doesn't become a choking problem, gets all the way through the digestive tract and out the back door, then he's okay. But if he chomps down on it, he's subject to that arsenic or cyanide depending on the fruit. And this picture, I swear to you, was just taken for the picture. There was a dog treat put in there. Bonsai, you know, was never allowed near a cookout, but it's just so important. All you do is turn your back for a second, pour a little wine, get something out of the cooler, answer somebody's question, and the dog's trying to grab the burger, the hot dog, or whatever it happens to be. And we have burnt paws, burnt snout, whatever. So keep them safe, and, you know, consider making it special for them. Make them those frozen pet treats that I talked about earlier, or buying them so that they have some good picnic time with you, maybe a little bit of white meat grilled chicken, but not the fried, and, you know, can have a good time as well. Because if you don't, if they get into these things, they're going to get stomach upsets. And when things are coming out of one end or both, you want to rest the stomach, but you want to give an antacid. The times you immediately need to get to the vet, if you have a senior dog or any dog that is diabetic, then you can't withhold the food. You need to talk to your vet if that pet is having vomiting or diarrhea. But on a pet that doesn't have that problem, withhold the food, but keep that water coming and give an antacid. You can certainly go the natural route with ginger, but with dogs, Mylanta, Pepcid, Gaviscon, or kaopectate are advisable. We're not talking cats today, and you can't do that for kitty cats, so just keep that in mind. I do like the liquids better than the chewables. I know the chewables are easier for them to eat, but they generally swallow them and it doesn't coat the tummy. Keep the water coming. You may need to add some electrolytes, and I'll talk to you about that in 1 second here. But in 24 hours, most pets that you've taken off the food, you know, no longer have the vomiting, don't have the diarrhea. Hopefully you've kept them well hydrated, and they're just hungry. So most vets will tell you to put them on, you know, some rice and boiled chicken or rice and scrambled eggs or rice and non-fat yogurt for a few days before you get them back on their kibble. But anytime there's blood in the vomit and diarrhea, if the pet is diabetic or anything else is going along with this, get to the vet at once. Dehydration is, you know, something that can come about from this. So we already talked about the Tuger test, touching the gums and some of the signs. So just keep the fluids going, but don't, you know, wait till the end of your hike and let the pet tank up then. Give him water all day long, fresh water, scrub out those bowls. And here's a do-it-yourself electrolyte recipe. You can give Pedialyte if recommended by your veterinarian, but it has to be the one without any artificial sweeteners or flavors because they often contain xylitol, which is detrimental to dogs. But you can put 4 cups water, a tablespoon honey or sugar, and a tablespoon, actually forgive me, that should be a teaspoon salt. Dogs should have less salt than sugar in their electrolytes. And what I often do with this is I put it in an ice cube tray, pop those electrolyte ice cubes out into a Ziploc baggie and keep it in the freezer. And on really hot days, just add those ice cubes to the water to give my, you know, best buddies what they need. So 4 cups water, a tablespoon, either honey or sugar, and a teaspoon of salt. And then when they're getting into those picnics and all, sometimes they swallow that corn cob or something they should not, and they're choking. So very quickly, if your dog is choking, always give him a moment to cough. Dogs don't understand gravity, I don't think, but they generally lower their heads and they try to cough to propel the object out of the throat. Very often they can do it on their own. But if they're pawing at the mouth, if they're starting to stumble, if they look like they need your help, if you can do so safely, take a look inside. Never just blindly reach in their mouth. You're liable to push the object, you know, farther back. And you don't want to pull something without seeing how it's positioned. Bones, even toothpicks from hors d'oeuvres get caught in the back teeth. And you need to see how it's positioned to pull one side up and then the other and vertically, you know, pull it out of your pet's mouth. For dogs, what I like you to practice with is putting your hand over the snout. Use your index finger and thumb to wrap their lips around their canine teeth. That way, if they bite down, they'll bite their own lip rather than you. And then with your thumb, gently lower the jaw, holding the tongue down to take a look inside. Some pets, however, may be in a panic and may not allow this. So it's best to go on to a Heimlich type maneuver. But what I do want to mention first is anytime you do get the object out when you see it, just always do a good inspection of the mouth afterwards, because sometimes sticks and bones or pieces of toys can actually do damage and you'll need veterinary care. But if you can't get the object out, or if the dog is just in too much of a panic that he won't let you, I'm going to take this off of my slides for just a moment so maybe you can see me a little bit better here. Okay, what you want to do, if this was the human Heimlich, you come up behind the dog, you know, and do one of these. However, he's not human. And by lifting him like this, you've actually given a gravity assist for the object to slide farther down the throat. You want to keep dogs 4 on the floor in their normal position, but you're going to do a similar technique. Let me lift him for 1 second. And when you're there with your furry best friend, notice that there's a triangle here. These are the ribs. And then there's a soft part of the belly behind the last rib. For medium or large dogs, you're going to put your fist there and cover with your other fist and give him a bear hug. So, you know, you come down to his level, keeping him like this, and it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And out it comes. The real key, though, is you must make contact with yourself and the dog's back. Don't leave airspace. If he's a smaller doggy, you may do something similar, but you're just going to put 2 fingers in that same soft part of the belly behind the last rib. Hold him against you, but then tabletop yourself. Remember, again, we want to keep the dog on this normal plane, even if his 4 aren't on the floor, but, you know, in that same area. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. There are alternate techniques to do if this doesn't work, but I'll tell you, of all the things I teach in first aid, I've had more people do this and do this effectively on a dog because it really seems to make a difference. It looks like I just shared the wrong place here. So let me wrap up sharing the right slides, folks. I want you to see those last pictures. You might see those a little more clearly. You make the fist, and where you see me there in the yellow jacket, I'm leaning into the dog, pulling him against me. With the smaller pet, I have him against me, but I'm going to tabletop myself because, again, if you do it in the upright position, whatever the obstruction is can slide farther down the throat. So I hope, you know, you don't have to do this, but I hope this is helpful. I am not somebody that recommends one of these slaps to the back. You can cause intervertebral disc damage and, you know, actually create a trust issue with your pet. But there are a few other steps you can always take first. I would only use that as a last resort if my pet had, you know, a closed airway. Alrighty. So my sign off to you today is supervise, supervise, supervise. Even when it's a senior dog, he's a toddler for your lifetime, and you need to be there for him to keep him safe and to love him unconditionally. You notice my little disclaimer, yes, Haiku is in that boat, but you know I'm at the back of that, underneath the water, pushing him along, having a great time. So I hope all of you and your senior best friends have a truly pawsome summer. And I will hang out as long as you guys need me to for any questions. I know I'm a fast talker, but I wanted to squeeze all of that in, and I hope that gives you some insights into things to watch out for. We can become paranoid pet parents because a lot of times we don't even know what we don't know. So I hope I've enlightened you through a few things to look out to keep your senior dog safe.
Thank you so much, Denise. That was really, really helpful and just so much great information that I know I learned a lot from you this afternoon. I'm sure others did too. Thank you. We do have a couple questions on Facebook. Amanda, do we have any other questions in the chat?
Yes, one of the questions that came up in the chat was just asking, could you please remind us of the name of the organization that provides O2 masks to fire departments?
Okay. Is that fine for me to do, Lisa, or should I have them email me?
No, it's fine.
Okay. The Emma Zen Foundation, EMMAZEN Foundation. And I'll tell you, there are several organizations that do this, so you might find another, but what I will say implicitly about this one, since I'm connected with it, is that our founder has really done the research, because what we have found is a lot of people will donate for oxygen masks, but if the fire department just gets one set, they're going to hang in the office. You really need to engage the battalion chief, and all of that is on the Emma Zen Foundation website, and you have to be able to supply enough oxygen masks for all of the engines in that company. They're really into standardization. All of the engines have to be the same. So, you know, great, sometimes we just want to donate something, but Deborah Jo will teach you how to do it right so that it gets used in your community.
Great. Other questions, Amanda?
No, that was all on Zoom.
Okay.
Okay, and on Facebook, we have a question about whether or not you can give Pepto-Bismol for upset stomachs.
That's a good question, and I'm sorry I didn't even bring that up. You know, I'm still finding some veterinarians in areas that will tell you to do so, but my understanding is, and it may be like 7 or 8 years ago now, they reformulated, and Pepto-Bismol actually has a lot of what's called salicylic acid. It's like aspirin. And for some dogs, it may be okay, but other dogs, it might cause some bleeding in the stomach. So you'll notice that if they're having vomiting or diarrhea, and it could be of concern. So, you know, especially if you have a more sensitive or an older pet, I would probably recommend Mylanta, Gaviscon, or Kaopectate, or get from the veterinarians what's called Cerenia, C-E-R-E-N-I-A, which is good for both dogs and cats.
Okay, great. And then just one last question about whether or not you have any tips if the dog is actually in a fight with a snake.
Yes, I've experienced that before. I guess the best thing I would say is a hose, and that's what I have done before. Is if you can grab your hose, and obviously, anytime you use a hose in summer, my first word of caution is that initial stream out of that hose can be scalding hot. So let it run away from the pet first, but then just try to blast, towards the face or at the snake or something with the water. Even commands like leave it won't always work, but having trained your pet to leave it and having a good recall, whether it's come or whatever, really can be lifesavers as well. So training is, of utmost importance. But once he has a snake in his mouth, if he hasn't gotten bitten, he may still be shaking at it. I've seen coyotes in particular do that, and a hose seems to be the best thing. There are places that offer snake avoidance clinics. I wish there were some that were more humane, because most of them use like vibration collars. What they do is they'll give your dog a 15-minute appointment with a vibration collar. And trust me, I've actually gone through this, and I made them put the vibration collar on me because I wanted to experience what it felt like. And it wasn't terrible, but the point is they make the dogs actually go to real snakes. They have the real snakes actually muzzled or in something that's like an e-collar with the front, because they want the snake to strike but not be able to bite the dog. And then the dog will get the correction. So see if you can find one with a more humane way to do it. Some people swear by those, that it keeps their dogs away from snakes, but some dogs just have such a high prey drive, like my Akita Bonsai, who you see down here on the right of the thing, that nothing would deter her if she felt like she was being a warrior that day. But my best advice would be to recall or the hose to try to get them to drop it.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Denise. We truly appreciate your time and your sharing of all of your expertise and experience with our supporters. We will share the webinar recording online, and for those of you who registered, we will also be sending a brief survey to get your feedback. And just thanks everybody for joining us. And thank you, Denise.
My pleasure, and thank you all for loving older best friends.
All right. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.